Hello and welcome to the Joint Operations Training Ground, Air Wing Training Course. Today we will cover Lesson 1, Air Wing and Runway Standard Operating Procedures. The purpose of this lesson is to outline the basic rules and procedures that govern the use of all aircraft both in the air and on the ground. Before we begin, I would like to go over some terms that will be used in this lesson and what they mean. The term Ground Commander refers to the person in charge of the entire mission and all its assets. The term radio add-on refers to mods such as Acre and Task Force Arrowhead Radio. The term tower refers to the frequency used for a specific airfield or FARP. All pilots must be tuned to this frequency when inbound or outbound to that location. All communication with the tower is for situational awareness only. No requests for movement authorization are required when using a tower. It is the responsibility of every pilot operating out of an airfield with a tower to use proper radio procedures to ensure the safe and smooth operation of their field. The term ATC, or Air Traffic Controller, refers to a person assigned to stay at the field and manage all inbound and outbound traffic. There will only be an ATC present in missions with a high number of aircraft operating at the same time. Unlike the tower, the ATC controls their field and the airspace that surrounds it. As such, all movement in these areas must be approved by the ATC. We will start by discussing what needs to occur in a mission before the pilot ever starts up their engines. We will then cover the movement procedures and radio protocols the pilot must follow from the time they fire them up until the time they shut them down. We will conclude this lesson with examples of proper radio communications. At the start of every operation, the ground commander must coordinate with all pilots, JTACs, and team leaders to establish call signs for all assets. For pilots and JTACs, call signs may be in-game names or custom names chosen by them or assigned by the ground commander. If using a radio add-on, this is the time when the ground commander will assign radio frequencies for all flights, JTACs, ground teams, other assets, and the tower or ATC. This is also the time when the ground commander or ATC will designate the runway number and if vertical takeoffs and landings are authorized for rotary wing aircraft. CAS pilots should coordinate with the ground commander and JTACs to establish starting IPs and BPs. These will be discussed in further detail in later lessons. All aircraft moving on the ground or through the airspace immediately surrounding the airfield will have lights on at all times, unless the usage of lights creates a safety risk, such as blinding of the pilots. If using a radio add-on, use the correct ATC or tower frequency to communicate all movement on the ground and in the airspace surrounding the airfield. If not using a radio add-on, only communicate takeoffs and landings to avoid congestion in the TeamSpeak channel. Fixed-wing aircraft will never take off or land on the taxiway and must only use the runway number established by the ground commander or ATC. In most cases, vertical takeoffs and landings will be authorized at the mission start unless there will be a significant amount of air traffic around the field. In the event that verticals are restricted, all rotary wing aircraft will taxi to the pre-established runway number and take off and land along the runway. When taxiing, use the lane closest to the runway and farthest from the ramp. Always stop at the runway threshold and visually check for inbound aircraft from both directions. Just because no one has declared they are on final doesn't mean a plane isn't about to land in 10 seconds. When taking off, use the lane farthest from the taxiway. When landing, use the lane closest to the taxiway. When landing, always exit at the end of runway, referred to as the EOR, unless otherwise instructed by the ATC. Never leave any vehicle parked on the runway or taxiway. Vehicles may be parked on the ramp, but only in such a way that they do not impede aircraft operations. We will now discuss emergency landing procedures and the circuit, or airfield traffic pattern. A pilot may declare an emergency at any time if their airframe has sustained significant damage, they are losing or have low fuel, or if any occupants are seriously injured. In the event of a declared emergency landing, all other aircraft will do the following. If on the taxiway or at runway threshold, hold position. If on the runway to take off, scramble immediately and clear the airspace. If on the runway because you just landed, proceed to the EOR. If you are inbound to land in a fixed-wing aircraft, enter the circuit. If you are inbound to land in a rotary wing aircraft and authorized for vertical, proceed at low altitude and speed while observing for aircraft. If not authorized for vertical, hold position at a low altitude at a point 500 meters perpendicular to the direction of the runway. Once the aircraft that declared the emergency has landed, airfield operations resume. In the event of an obstruction on the runway, an emergency landing being declared, or being given a go-around command from the ATC, you will need to enter the circuit. Think of the circuit as a large oval around the airfield. When you are in the circuit, you should keep the runway off your left wing at a distance of 500 to 700 meters. The minimum altitude for aircraft in the circuit is 500 meters. This will give enough airspace for aircraft to safely land and take off under the circuit. If there are multiple aircraft in the circuit, the first aircraft to enter will be at 500 meters, with each following aircraft increasing their altitude by 50 to 75 meters. Pilots should coordinate with each other about their position and altitude within the pattern. The pattern will always be flown in a left-hand or counterclockwise circuit. Landings will resume once the obstruction is removed, the all clear is given for an emergency, or once the ATC has cleared you to do so. The first pilot to enter the pattern is the first to land. The pilot will begin his descent from 500 meters during his next pass of the downward leg. He will call his turn onto the base leg and set his aircraft to its landing configuration. At this time, the second aircraft in the pattern will drop to 500 meters, and all other aircraft will drop 50 meters in the pattern as well. The pilot will call his turn on the final and land his aircraft. Once the first aircraft has touched down, the second aircraft can begin its descent from 500 meters during its next pass of the downward leg. This procedure repeats until all aircraft have landed. Once the circuit is clear, direct approaches will be used until another emergency or go-around are called for.
Wolf 45, taxiing runway 20. Wolf 45, holding, threshold 20. Wolf 45, rolling. Wheels up. Wolf 45, inbound runway 20. Wolf 45 on final. Wolf 45, taxiing to ramp.
Wolf 16, request taxi.
You are cleared to taxi to runway 20.
Wolf 16, request takeoff.
Negative, Wolf 16. Hold position. You are clear for takeoff.
Wolf 16, inbound.
Wolf 16, proceed to runway 20.
Wolf 16, request landing.
You are cleared for landing. Negative, Wolf 16. Go around.
Wolf 16, request taxi to service area.
You are cleared to taxi to service area.
This concludes the Joint Operations Training Ground Air Wing Training Course, Lesson 1, Air Wing and Runway Standard Operating Procedures. Thank you for your time and attention.